Saturday was devastating, and the crushing part in all of this is Auburn did enough to win. They just don't know how to.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me as it does every single Monday, it is the Lindsey Crosby. Lindsey, Saturday, it was devastating. It was devastating for the Auburn Tigers, not only the players on the field and the coaches on the coaching staff, but of course also the fan base. I mean, there's nothing good about it. We'll talk about what we can do moving forward, as well as how impressive the young guys was. But the sad truth in all of this, and I've seen different people phrase this in different ways, and it's true, is Auburn did enough to win. They played really, really solid outside of a few situations, which were key and resulted in Auburn not scoring points and giving points away. But the fact of the matter is this team doesn't know how to win, Lindsey, and they don't know how to close out games. And that's not just a thing that happened Saturday. It's happened, for the last several years at this point.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that outside of the two blowout wins that you should have won, this was Auburn's best played game of the season. I think this was better than Cal. I think it was better than Arkansas.
Sure.
And in just about every single respect, other than the score, Auburn outplayed Oklahoma in just about every facet. I think one of the big things you can point to, everybody talks about like that long touchdown run to open the game from Oklahoma on the scripted drive. And after they got out of that scripted drive, they just could not get things done against Auburn's defense. You held them to under 300 yards of total offense. You put up almost 500.
Gosh.
And
I'm sorry, Lindsey,
go ahead.
Let's don't forget the narrative going into this of how good Oklahoma's defense was and is. And this is an Auburn team that has been kind of hot and cold, but the chunk plays have been there. The production and yardage has been there. And they did it again against by far their best defense that they've played so far. Like there is a positive in this. The issue is like you can't close a game. Like that's the issue here.
It's like it feels like the issue for me watching, from home. I wasn't in the press box, but it feels like this game was decided on the margins, right? You were better than them on offense. You were better than them on defense as far as a production standpoint, a yardage standpoint, all those things.
Sure.
But you weren't better than them on special teams. Special teams were atrocious on Saturday.
Sure.
And situationally, you got things wrong where they got things right. The play calling down at the goal line in the first half, the end of the half, the clock management there, the play calling and the quarterback decision making on the pick six. It was all of the little things. And weirdly, I think I'm a little more optimistic than a lot of Auburn people are that you are farther along in the rebuild than we thought, because it feels like this was the game where you could see, okay, Payton Thorne, with one glaring exception, can operate in the structure of the offense and thrive. Not just survive, but actually thrive. But Auburn couldn't get it done. The play calling, his interception was huge, and we'll break all that stuff down. But the structure is there. The bones are there. You just can't flesh it out. And I don't know at this point if the players on this roster are going to be able to do that with these coaches calling these plays.
Yeah, but also okay, sure, Payton Thorne looked great, but at this point, what does that matter? Does it give you a little more faith than, okay, it wasn't the offense, maybe it was the quarterback? I don't know, because guys were open pretty consistently, and Payton found them a lot of the times on Saturday. But it's okay, they looked the best that they have, and it was 3 winnable games, yet you lost all 3 when you include Cal and Arkansas. But now you look ahead and it's well, what does it matter? Payton Thorne doesn't get another year. You're not going to make a bowl game unless something really, really crazy happens, which it could. I mean, if they play the way that they did against Oklahoma and they can close out on the goal line and they can kick and make field goals and they can, not turn the football over, like you can still win some of these games that are left. It's not impossible to get 6 wins, but I do think it's a pretty uphill battle.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like I think everything you said is true. It's like I don't think Auburn is as bad as their record, but my question is to you and just to, in general, like, does it matter? Does it matter when so much about this offense is predicated on the quarterback, which isn't unique? That's the game of football right now. And you feel better about Thorne as a quarterback, at least I do. But then I ask myself, like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this season, like, what are the goals that are left on the table? Make a bowl game. But okay, so what? So and that's kind of, I mean, that's a crappy place to be, right? I mean, it's awful.
I think, okay, so we're at a position where we knew going in, Auburn was not going to contend for the playoff. This was not a playoff team going in. We knew that. The goal, the ceiling now of this team may be lower, but the end result of the year was going to be make a bowl game. And you were going to decide success by how many wins you got on your path to a bowl game. Did you get 8? Did you get 9? Did you luck into 10? Did you stumble into 7? Now you're in a situation, maybe it's just 6. I still think that end goal of a bowl game is there, but more importantly, everything other than the quarterback, you get, I hate saying this, you get the proof of concept that all of it works. You get proof of concept that the DJ Durkin defense, these young players can go out there and make plays. You get proof of concept that the play calling can take these amazing receivers you added and generate offense. Yeah, but you'll have a new quarterback next year and you'll have the same questions. That's the problem.
Yeah, I do want to push back a little bit on this because the assumption is that you do enough to not lose the locker room and to not lose your recruiting class. And if that happens, like if you are able to somehow go 6-6 per se, which once again, that involves you now beating either Missouri or Kentucky on the road. So we'll say Kentucky for the sake of this conversation, beating ULM, Vandy, and then probably Texas A&M at home. Like that's the path.
The upset
that's probably the most likely path to this. And that's just a lot. I just can't see this team doing all of those things. If you get one of those, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not a crazy thing. But to me, I just don't really see that path happening. But maybe it does. And if you do that, is that enough to keep the locker room together? I'm really interested to see what this coaching staff does from like the internal messaging of what they're going to do. And like, do you see younger guys? We're going to talk more about this in a second, but do you see younger guys play more with that in mind? What does that do to the guys who came here with 1 year left of eligibility, who kind of trusted you? It's a really crappy situation for this coaching staff, and they've got to figure out how to tread these waters right now.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the best case scenario for you is get the young players, the freshmen, the underclassmen, enough experience where this doesn't happen next year. You get that year 3 bump. I mean, Bruce Pearl was a guy that the first couple of years was they were not good. And he got that kind of year 3 bump and ended up being a very, very good basketball team. And I'm not a shooty hoops guy. We all know that. But
the difference though, and like we did see glimpses of Bruce Pearl teams like having moments of them being able to win, but it did take a long time culturally to expect to win a game every time you go out there.
Yeah.
I don't think you saw this massive jump like of just not knowing how to win in year 2 and then all of a sudden expecting to win consistently in year 3. Like culturally, there's got to be a big difference in that. Can you do it? Can it be done? Sure. I mean, look at what Indiana's doing right now. Look at what Illinois has done this year. Like there is some like precedence of, okay, stability is good for a program, but at some point, you can talk about the recruiting and you can talk about the talent and you could talk about what you've done in the past and you've got to do it now. And so far, Hugh Freeze hasn't done the now yet.
Yeah, he's done the recruiting. You're trying to get the stability. And I do think that one of the things you kind of saw with Auburn basketball, kind of to go back to that analogy here, but a lot of the stuff on the margins, right? Getting that extra pass in to get the better look, making the key shots late in games when you had to have a bucket. You saw a lot of the little stuff is what changed in year 3 because of the experience those players got in years 1 and 2 of understanding this is what Bruce Pearl's trying to do. This is the culture he's instilling. You kind of saw some of those things on the margins, and once the talent caught up with the coach, that's when they started to win. And it kind of feels like that's the blueprint you're in now for football. It's not super exciting in the here and now for a fan, but you can still see the long-term plan here and see how this could still pay off.
Quick note, I didn't mean to say Indiana. It's their first year. They got a first year head coach. I meant to say Illinois on that with old Brett Bielema. So these young guys, spectacular, and the rest of the season needs to be about them. More on that in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Lindsey, I ask you this all the time. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel?
The MLB playoffs start tomorrow, and I'm going to be all over FanDuel on this, getting all of my picks in, my props, my straight up picks, my money lines, all of that from FanDuel.
Right. Yep. Hey, a lot of you guys are in the comments saying Auburn's going to upset Georgia. Hey, from your mouth to God's ears, FanDuel has Auburn as a 23.5-point underdog. So if you believe that, go do the thing over at FanDuel.com. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. The young guys have been nothing short of incredible, and they're getting better over the course of the season. And it does. I do think it leads to a few questions of Demarcus Riddick. If Auburn wins, the story is about Kaleb Harris and Demarcus Riddick to me, and Malcolm Simmons, but just defensively, it's like those two guys really stood out to me. And Kaleb Harris has played a good bit this year. Riddick has not. And it's like all of a sudden you put him on the field and he's all over the place. And it's like, did that just happen? Like, where has he been? Why hasn't he been playing more? But when you look at him and Kaleb Harris, Malik Blockton, Amaris Williams, I mean, he played 5 snaps. Jay Crawford, which he played 54 and really performed pretty well. We called for him a ton last week. I mean, it's just these young guys. They're getting snaps. They're getting reps in the most important game of the season so far. And they belonged, Lindsey. They belonged. And to me, I think you have to make the rest of the season about them because keeping them within the program is the most important thing moving forward.
Yeah, there's a couple rooms where you're going to have a lot of either turnover or you can't afford a lot of turnover. Yeah, the linebacker room is one of the ones you have a ton of upperclassmen in there. You got to get like Demarcus Riddick. He's got to play plenty and he's got to stick around. The defensive back room is incredibly young, but Kaleb Harris was the highest rated player on this defense Saturday. Right. And we're learning the depth issues we thought that we had maybe aren't as bad as we expected. They're still pretty bad, but not as bad as we expected. But yeah, you've got to get these young kids experience. And I do think that this is something that has the potential to turn around your season a little bit, right? If you can get some of these young players enough experience where they can not only survive, but thrive in the SEC, that's what gives you the ability to upset a Texas A&M and get to 6 wins and get bowl eligibility and get that month of practices. That's the biggest part of that, really. And so,
that's a good point.
Getting these kids on the field early and often is important. And you mentioned in the last segment, it sucks a little bit for some of these veterans who committed to come to you in their final seasons with the expectation of I'm going to play 50 snaps a game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we played you the first 3 games heavily and we didn't win those games. These kids came in the game and we either won or we looked a lot better. we gotta play the best players. And I do think that there is still a little bit of meritocracy in football.
Yeah, there is. And to some extent, like, I agree with that. Like, there should be, but I don't know. It's not like, excuse me, it's not like Amaris Williams is getting an opportunity and then like looking bad in those 5 snaps. Malcolm Simmons played 7 snaps, and it somehow feels like he was everywhere, but he
was also the highest graded offensive player for Auburn.
Yeah, of course he was. Of course he was. Yeah, and then like the freshman that I don't think is getting enough reps or snaps or attention that I do think we will see more of moving forward is Perry Thompson and potentially Bryce Kane, but I think more so Perry Thompson. He played 3 snaps. He played 3 snaps on Saturday. And so to me, he's the guy that you got to make sure is happy and feels like it's a part of, he's a part of this moving forward. I think like we don't want to talk about this, but we have to, because it is relevant. You look at Perry and you look at Cam and you look at Malcolm and you look at Bryce's freeze 4, which all branded themselves originally as this freeze 5, with Ryan Williams being a part of it. And then you see what Ryan Williams did at Alabama against Georgia on Saturday. And it's like, man, are they going to try? Are they comparing themselves to Ryan Williams? Are they asking like, would he be doing that if he was here?
Right.
Could I be doing what he's doing if I was somewhere else? Like that is a factor in this, and you've got to prove to these guys that they are the future. I don't fully know how you do that. I don't know if you have to do that in a game or not, but that's the world of this transfer portal that we live in. You got to make sure these guys are happy and buy in to you buying into them. And right now, like, I mean, I don't know Perry personally, but I imagine he expected to play more than 3 snaps on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Perry Thompson is you were at the point where he cannot redshirt, right? He's played in 5 games now, but he got 1 snap against Cal. He got 8 against Alabama A&M and 3 against Oklahoma. So 12 snaps across 3 games is essentially not using him at all, especially when against Oklahoma, 1 of those was a pass play. 2 of them were run plays. So you're at the point of you can't redshirt him, play him, and give him more snaps. I'm not going to suggest that like, hey, he should be the new Wildcat quarterback over Sam Jackson, but
we don't need one of those.
I do find it wild that Sam Jackson got 7 snaps and Perry Thompson got 3. Because if you ask me who is probably just more full of natural talent and who is more important to the Auburn program on a long-term basis, it's Perry Thompson. And it feels like they haven't prioritized the right guys. If we're at the point where you say where we got to play the young guys, Perry Thompson should be getting 25 snaps a game. And it's
also a situation where like it's not like the guys that are playing over him are like super sharp and clean.
Except for KLS.
Don't take KLS off the field. He's incredible. He's incredible. I mean, he's gonna be he's gonna have a top 10, maybe top 5 receiving season in Auburn history if he keeps this up, which I think he just makes a play every single game. He's awesome. So
he is already over last year's touchdown totals for any Auburn wide receiver. He's got 6 touchdowns on the year. No Auburn receiver. He has 415 yards and 6 touchdowns on the year. No Auburn receiver last year had that many yards or touchdowns. He's already passed all of last year's wide receiver room.
It's a great point. It's a great point by you. So what does Auburn need to do moving forward outside of playing some of these young guys? Let's jump into that in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets for anything. Lindsey, can you imagine buying tickets anywhere other than our friends at Game Time?
I absolutely could not, and I would never. I would not dare to do that. Fun fact, and I'm sure those of you who listen to the recap show on Sunday already know this. Our friend Daryl Dapprich sent me a text on Wednesday evening. He said, hey, I had tickets to this Braves game, and it just got canceled and rescheduled for today, for Monday, a doubleheader today. He's like, what's going to happen? I'm like, I guarantee you by the time I respond to this, you're going to have an email from Game Time. They're going to refund you. And in fact, they did. They refunded him within like 15 minutes. He sent you and me a screenshot, and we're like, yeah, Game Time took care of Daryl Dapprich because 100%. It's a great company to buy tickets from.
Yeah, good customer service for a ticketing platform.
He didn't have to reach out. They did it on their own.
They did it on their own. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. The everydayers know 2 shows drop every single day, so be sure to come back later today and like the video and subscribe. And if you're on audio, go ahead and follow as well. But Lindsey, as far as moving forward, what does Auburn need to do? I think you need to do everything you can to play a similar game like you played against Oklahoma. I think if Auburn plays the way they played against Oklahoma, they will beat a few of the teams that are left on their schedule. I don't think Georgia or Missouri, but if you do what you did, I think Kentucky will certainly be a battle. Obviously, Vandy and ULM, I think if you play like you did against Oklahoma, you're there. And honestly, I haven't been blown away by Texas A&M. And so if Auburn keeps kind of trending up like they have been, hasn't resulted in wins, sadly, but it's a boring thing. But if Auburn plays like they did against Oklahoma and fix a few of these glaring issues that they had, which the coaching staff or Hugh Freeze owned right after the game, you've got a chance. You've got a chance to get 6 wins.
You do. And I think that Auburn needs to be a little bit more strategic about getting these youngsters experience and putting them in different positions so that you can see what they do well and what they don't. Like I want to see a formation with Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman on the outside, and Malcolm Simmons in the slot. Like I want to see those 3 receivers on the field together at the same time, right? I want to see a defensive alignment that has some of these young pass rushers all on the field at the same time. Demarcus Riddick is on, just multiple guys. Malik Blockton's lined up at defensive end, and Amaris Williams opposite him. Like, I want to see these young guys on the field together so that, one, they get that experience, and then Auburn can see what they can and can't do. I'm not saying bench all of the veterans, but I'm saying you need to make a point every game of getting these kids out there together. Get them to let them be out there together, hopefully scheme them up to get some success so that, one, you can keep them on your roster with the transfer portal, because that is a thing you have to think about.
Yeah, it is.
But then also you accelerate their development a little bit so that next season, provided whatever quarterback you're plugging in doesn't have the same sort of mistakes that you've seen from Payton Thorne, you don't have a repeat of this season. Year 3 can be a leap forward, the leap forward that we expected this year. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a crappy situation because I feel so bad for these players because you can't blame effort. You can't blame effort at all. I mean, it's just, you should not lose a game playing the way that they did. And
I think the pick 6, the guy that raced down the field and made the tackle right at the goal line, was Cam Coleman. He hauled ass down the field and made the tackle at the goal line. They fell into the end zone, so the touchdown counted, but he chased him down from behind. We see that on NFL highlight films. We've seen that for years about Benjamin Watson of your New England Patriots chasing down Champ Bailey and things like that. Dude's just Julio Jones chasing down a Saints player, I think it was, or a Bucks player.
You can't give Ben Watson credit on the week we're playing Georgia. You can't do that.
Good point.
You can't do that.
Bum. He's a scrub. He's a bum. He's a bum.
Yeah, it's just keeping the locker room is the most important thing. And we won't really know if that happens or not, probably until the portal opens, unless we hear rumblings of stuff. But
right.
Yeah, your point about the red shirt situation for a lot of these guys, kind of, okay, it answers that. But all in all, it's just not a good situation. And you hate it. You hate it for these kids. So, Lindsey, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Good time because the Atlanta Braves play a doubleheader today, winning their into the postseason. We'll have all of the coverage on that on both the Braves Today podcast and on bravestoday.com, as well as the First Pitch podcast, daily MLB recap show, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and hey, go and check out thebarnauburn.com. Lindsey drops his Auburn baseball stuff in there, as well as some conversations that I had with folks after the game. I dropped that in there, thebarnauburn.com. The first month is $1, so go check that out, thebarnauburn.com. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us and continuing to think about the game that happened Saturday. I don't know what's wrong with us, but we just can't get enough of Auburn football. So, hey, please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.